Going through Evan's perfect fits for the Bucs in the 2024 NFL Draft. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Make sure that you follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at eKloskyWTSP. We are your credentialed members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Evan is on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10TampaBay.com. And Locked On Bucs is here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show, become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, plus one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs to sign up today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. The NFL Draft is just a few short weeks away. And while, Evan, you and I have discussed the NFL Draft numerous times on this episode, we are going to dive into your favorite fits for the Buccaneers that they can snag with their selections on each day. So let's start with day one, which is, of course, the first round. And Evan, we've talked a lot about edge rushers and interior offensive linemen and these potential first-round picks. But who is your favorite player that the Bucs can potentially land at pick 26?
Well, I'm seeing it more and more. Originally, I thought there was no shot. Now I'm kind of seeing in the 20s, Liatu Latu hanging around.
Yeah.
And to me, if he sneaks in at 20, I think the Buccaneers would be a team willing to trade up to get a talent like that because it is such a need. So for me, circle star, keep eyes on him because I just think he's a game changer. Personally, I would be okay with a guy like Chop. I'm not in love with a guy like Chop. So I just, that one seems like a home run pick. Just like I remember last year, I was kind of talking about Kalijah Kancey, and we just weren't quite sure if he was going to make it to the Buccaneers. And it just made sense on paper in a lot of ways. And there was a whole head of steam after the combine. Then I think it dipped a little bit. So that's one. This might be a little bit surprising, but kind of like Cooper Dejean. I think that he is, Todd Bowles talked about in Orlando these multifaceted players. And there are a few guys who can do that. There's Zion McCollum, there's Antoine Winfield Jr., even Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is that type. Cooper Dejean would be that type. So he just makes plays. And with the new rules, with kick returns and all that stuff, having another guy who can do that role, I think is important. I think he can also give you a safety net behind a Devin Tompkins. If maybe you wanted to go in a different direction, he can also return punts. I'm just of the belief that a guy this talented, athletic, and versatile, I would love to put that into Todd Bowles' toolkit and figure out what he can do with him. Especially because we know with Todd Bowles, he might put him at safety. He might put him on the line, zone. It just that's the guy to me that fits his type, to a T. So I love him, and it seems like the 20s are where he's going to fall, 20 to 32 maybe. And then with the offensive line, I have a couple just because Jackson Powers-Johnson is sort of everybody's favorite. He is a center, so you don't know if he slides just because of, people don't really want to exhaust a first-round pick on a center. But if he does get selected, which the steam has for a while been, yes, he's going to be taken before the Buccaneers, a Graham Barton, I think, would be – now he doesn't come from a smaller school, so I don't know if Jason Light's going to appreciate that, though he did get Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. So –
no, but I think Smith was Penn State. He's only drafted two small school guys, really.
Yeah, Marpet, Gedicke, Mauk.
Yeah.
He didn't draft Ryan Jensen, but Ryan Jensen's from that ilk. It don't take it too literally. It's just funny because those are the types. But Graham Barton, I think, can come in, start day one, be that type of dude for the Buccaneers. So those are kind of who I'm eyeing in on. Of course, we're talking about a moving target, so you got to give me a little bit of grace because I don't know what's going on the boards, and someone can fall that I can really like, and so on and so forth. But I think if I had to pepper thoughts of who is going to be in that range, I think those four are there, and there are some other names, but I think that's where I would stop.
Yeah, well, and that's something that I've been talking about. I've been doing positional series looking at potential starting offensive linemen that they could get on day two. And on Tuesday's episode, I talked about what running backs I like as the best fits, and I was looking at, mostly end of day two, beginning of day three kind of guys. And it's like, of course, this is what they're projected, right? So that's really the only information we can go off of. We know on the first night of the draft, somebody's going to be taken in the top 15 that's going to shock everyone. And there's going to be a guy that has been projected to be a first rounder since the scouting combine that's going to fall into day two, and everyone's going to go, well, how did that happen? Well, because it happens every single year. But Cooper Dejean is an interesting one just because, number one, I mean, I think you made some great points about him, and you're talking about a player that you can line up at corner or safety, or, he gives you some depth at a variety of different spots. He can be moved all over the place. He can make plays. I think kind of what gives me pause about it, and again, I would love to have that kind of skill set in Todd Bowles' defense, is now all of a sudden you have to find a starting edge rusher and you have to find a starting offensive lineman on day two. And I think that could probably prove to be pretty difficult. But again, it's about the collective, right? It's not necessarily, the draft isn't won on the first day. It's about which players you get and how they fit on your roster from the top to the bottom.
Yeah. And, it really all depends on how you see the rest of the draft, right? Like, to me, and we'll get to day two, to me, I don't think you need to, if you're the Buccaneers, even though I would be totally all right with it, considering how talented all these wide receivers are, you don't need to take a wide receiver in round one, because you're going to have someone probably really talented there in round two and round three, who typically might be a round one, round two guy in a different year. But it's just such a stacked class. Inside offensive line, also a very stacked class. So there is depth there if you feel like, hey, let's go for a talent like, Dejean, or if they love Nate Wiggins, I don't know. But you might say, it depends on Jason Light's board. Hey, we got these 3 cornerbacks as round one grades. And then we have a bunch of dudes who are maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds. If we don't go with them here, it's going to be an end of round selection. And it's a toss-up whether they're actually going to be a part of the big picture or not next season. So, we're doing this without knowing the big picture, but I just tend to believe that the floor is very high on a guy like Dejean, just because typically he's going to settle into a role with the amount of tinkering you can do with him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we are going to talk about some of those day 2 prospects. That is coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With Game Time's last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off when buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, or theater near you. I love the all-in pricing, so there's no shock when I get to check out. What I see is what I pay. Then, when I get to check out, nothing makes it easier than being able to use Apple Pay. It takes me absolutely no time at all from the moment I pick my seats to the moment I have them right there on my phone. And with their lowest price guarantee, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So as it stands, the Buccaneers only have one pick on day 1, but on day 2, they have 3 selections. So that means they end up with 4 total picks in the top 100. Of course, things can change. We know Jason Light likes to move around. More often than not, he likes to move down rather than up in those early days. And then day 3 is when he likes to jump all over the place. And sometimes he says, screw it, and will trade the last 2 picks that he has to move up in another round just so that he can be done and get things over with. But who are some of the players that are projected to be available on day 2 around the Buccaneers picks that you really, really like for them?
So a trendy name that we've been hearing a lot, edge again, Marshawn Kneeland out of Western Michigan. I would say that would have to be a second-round pick if you're going to get him. So, Jonah Ellis is also kind of on that like round 3 type of grade. Highly productive out of Utah, intrigues me. But, those would kind of be my edge focuses there. Wide receiver, I really like Ricky Pearsall. I think that he's got fantastic mitts, shifty. He's just very light on his feet. He seems like a guy who can play in the slot day 1. He's not afraid of getting hit as well. You kind of need that mentality. There's a lot that I like out of the wide receiver from Florida. Cornerback, solely based on name, TJ Tampa, who ironically comes from St. Pete. So, if you want to go the local angle, tremendous cornerback out of Iowa State. As for Washington State, if you're looking at a safety, another one of those, you can put him in a bunch of different spots. Jaden Hicks, though, with the addition of Jordan Whitehead, I don't know if you necessarily need to swing that high for a guy like Hicks, but he can do a bunch of different things. You don't want to – I mentioned these secondary pieces. If you pick, let's just say theoretically, Cooper Dejean in the first round, I wouldn't be a proponent of then going like TJ Tampa or Jaden Hicks, right? There's a song and dance to this all. Offensive linemen, Christian Haynes and Mason McCormick. Haynes out of UConn, McCormick out of South Dakota State. Cody Malk would have to be okay with that coming from North Dakota State. Dakota marker's a big deal up there. The Jacks have done a pretty good job in that game. And finally, quarterback Spencer Rattler. I think he's gotten some steam here entering the draft. Obviously, in my eyes, not a round one guy, but former 5-star, transferred to South Carolina from Oklahoma, a Lincoln Riley type of recruit. Who else was a Lincoln Riley type of guy? Baker Mayfield. Who also had to go through learning how to grow up a little bit and simmer down and not be as emotional. Baker Mayfield seems like a really good guy to put under his wing, as Rattler's got a lot of talent. Smaller dude, give me a year in an NFL training program, get his body right, doesn't have to play, sit behind Kyle Trask as the number 3 QB. But assuming Trask will move on next year, he's your backup quarterback, and I don't know, he'll push Baker, right? So that's a little bit of a long-term view. Doesn't help you at all this year, which I know that I'm a big proponent of getting pieces that are going to help this year. But he's talented.
Yeah, he definitely is, and I'll tell you this much: if the Buccaneers take Spencer Rattler on day 2 of this year's draft, I'm going to have a hard time not disliking that pick. It has nothing to do with Spencer Rattler, but when we're talking about 4 picks in the top 100 and you can get 3, maybe even 4 starters or potential starters out of that haul, I can't justify once again the Bucs utilizing one of those picks on a quarterback like they did with Kyle Trask a few years ago when they used a second-round pick on him when they could have used it somewhere else. And again, at the time, it made a little bit of sense. But given the state of the Buccaneers right now, I would have a hard time justifying it, just me personally. So just fair warning, if the Bucs take him, I'm going to need you to come on the live episode that I'll be doing that night to tell everyone why it's okay. You're going to have to do a short notice Locked On Bucs live on YouTube appearance to explain this one away, because I will point to April 2nd as the day that you spoke this into existence.
Got it. Is that the same day we're going to talk about Illinois not scoring a bucket in an hour and getting trounced in a 30-0 run by UConn? Is that the same day?
I mean, sure, we can talk about it. Look, it was going to be tough to beat UConn anyway. They didn't do themselves any favors. Probably one of the worst game plans I've ever seen by Brad Underwood. You wanted to keep doing the same thing over and over that wasn't working. You took your best player and you had him continuously drive the lane against an 8-foot center, and it wasn't working, instead of moving the ball the way you did against Iowa State, finding those open threes. Guerrier was terrified.
I got him going, folks.
It was –
the salt is emerging.
No, it was just tough. Look.
Totally fine. Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah, I'm totally fine.
I texted my dad. I was like, no matter what happens, and this was before the game started, no matter what happens, I'm chalking the season up as a win. Underwood finally got out of the first weekend. They made it to the Elite Eight. It was a good run. But UConn's a freaking buzzsaw. Nobody's stopping them anyway.
Oh, well, you had him for a half.
Yeah, if you had told me that Terrence Shannon Jr. was going to have 2 points at halftime and they were only going to be down 5, I'd have taken that all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all right. Men's and women's college basketball, UConn is going to be the champion in both of them. But we're not here to talk college basketball. We're here to talk Buccaneers draft prospects that Evan loves for the Buccaneers. We've talked about day 1. We've talked about day 2. We're going to talk about some of those day 3 prospects coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, over-unders. You can even pick who's going to win it all. We are down to the final 4 with UConn looking unstoppable as the overall favorites at -190, followed by Purdue at +195, Alabama at +1,600, and the NC State Wolfpack with the longest remaining odds of +1,800, despite having the darling of the tournament in DJ Burns. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and bet college hoops until they cut down the nets. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs. And Evan has talked about some of those day 1 options. He's talked about some of those day 2 options, even throwing out Spencer Rattler, which I thought was very interesting. I don't agree, but I get it. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense.
We're through the first 3 rounds, essentially, where the Bucs will get 4 players as it stands now. But day 3 is all about depth. It's about potential. It's about finding that surprise gem that we're going to be talking about as a potential steal of the draft after having gotten them on day 3. Last year, the Bucs got Servassier Dennis and Trey Palmer on day 3. Some notable day 3 picks under Jason Light: Cade Otton, Jake Camarda, Zion McCollum, your guy, KJ Britt, Anthony Nelson, Scooter Scotty Miller. You know, these are some guys that have been contributors. KJ Britt now in line to be a starter. So the Bucs have 1 pick in the 4th round, 2 in the 6th, a 7th round pick. So 4 more potential players. Though I'm sure, again, that's going to change come draft weekend with all the trades and all the movement and everything. But Evan, who are some of those sneaky sleeper guys that you like for the Buccaneers on day 3?
I'll say this. Typically on day 3, Jason Light likes to grab at least a couple of guys who are going to play special teams, right? He starts to really invest in guys. Sure, they play this like why am I blanking on his last name? Josh from TCU.
Josh Hayes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Josh, when he was selected, it was like, huh? But I mean, a fantastic special teams player in year 1 for the Buccaneers. Those are kind of the value type of picks where I'm not even going to act like I know what he's searching for in that stuff. But as far as back of the draft guys, here are the 4 names I wrote down. Ray Davis, running back, having that comfort level with Liam Cohen helps. We know that they want to give Rachaad White a little bit more of a breather. It's a little bit unrealistic for him to ride the amount of carries that he did last season and then do it again this season without breaking down at some point. He's built well, but I think he will be better if he can get a little bit more of a break. So Ray Davis is a name that I'm very interested in for obvious reasons. Johnny Wilson out of Florida State. He's huge. Like
6'7".
I mean, he's one of he'll be one of the tallest wide receivers ever in the NFL. You telling me you can't design a red zone package for that guy? And not to mention you have Mike Evans and Johnny Wilson on the field together. Like, I'm not a very big one-on-one guy in the red zone. Like, just, throw it up. But like Mike Evans is an exception. Johnny Wilson could be that exception too. So to me, I liked his hands. I don't think he's like the quickest or the shiftiest or the best route runner, but I like his hands. I like his height. I'm willing to toy around with that. If Baker can sail it a little high to this guy, I mean, theoretically speaking, there should be a sweet spot there where you can hit him and it's unguardable. So he intrigues me a lot. A tight end who I'll put on Front Street, near and dear to my heart. Covered him in Spokane, played at UW for 5 years. Devin Culp had a heck of a combine out in Indianapolis. Tremendous measurables. I think he's the perfect counterbalance also to the tight end out of UW. And Cade Otton, who he played with. Devin Culp, he can catch the ball, but I like his athleticism and his ability to block. And that's kind of what they need, because they need a foil for Cade Otton so he doesn't run into 90+% of snaps. And he logged some games at 100%, which is absurd at the tight end position. He just needs a breather. And so you got to work the way that they kind of used Keith a little bit in that role. He had a handful of catches. I mean, Devin should probably have, 10 targets a year, but he's there to kind of play a limited role, block, and I think a good character guy. Finally, Josh Proctor out of Ohio State. Again, one of those secondary pieces, special teams, gamer. He really progressed at his time in at Ohio State. I think every year he got a little bit better, which is what I like seeing. So that's just another guy who I think you can find there in like the 5th, 6th round of dudes who maybe are falling through the cracks.
Yeah, well, and I talked about Ray Davis on yesterday's episode. For those that haven't heard it, go back and listen. I do my top 5 running back fits. He wasn't at the top of my list, but he's in my top 5. And you're right, it's the connection with Liam Cohen that just makes it make sense. Not to mention the production that he had under Liam Cohen was comparable to that of the production that he had at Vanderbilt and Temple combined. We're talking more all-purpose touchdowns in 1 year at Kentucky than his other 4 years of college football combined, all because of all under Liam Cohen. So that one makes a lot of sense. And yeah, tight end's another interesting position that I've thought about a couple of times. I don't know if there's enough picks that I would end up spending one on a tight end. I kind of like the idea, get through the draft, maybe sign a low-cost veteran tight end to be able to come in.
Devin Culp might be that guy. It's true. He might, I don't disagree with that strategy at all. I don't love the tight ends this year. I just, I think there are some good blocking type tight ends. I don't, unless you're going to use a day 1, day 2 selection, which I don't know about, because I'm a fan of Cade. You don't need someone to take Cade completely out of the game. You just need someone to kind of help him, right? And so I just wanted to reaffirm I agree with your analysis.
All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this WTSP Wednesday. Again, Evan's favorite fits by day for the Buccaneers. And I know some of the people in the chat are going to be excited about the Johnny Wilson reference. We were talking about him on a live episode not too long ago. But yeah, you're right. There has to be a sweet spot in there where it's just unguardable.
Johnny's down there somewhere. Because he's all I can see under – he's the tallest building in the city.
He will have a 100% jump ball catch rate in the end zone. So some team is going to be lucky to grab him. But, yeah, please check out everything that Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. Check out everything that I'm doing over at bucksnation.com. Again, 30 prospects in 30 days. We're going to have a draft profile every single day of a potential Buccaneers target there at bucksnation.com. So check that out. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eCloskey, WTSP. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.